You know that you're a generational chain breaker. You're ready to liberate yourself from past limitations and perspectives to manifest and quantum leap into your highest potential on your highest timeline. But sometimes you need a little support on your journey. If you're ready to live an abundant life, grounded and secure in your body and in the real world, join us here to expand your perspective and learn new tools. I'm your host, Becky Royts, a Reiki master, author, healing hairstylist, and life coach, and this is the Everyday Healing Podcast. Welcome back to the Everyday Healing Podcast. I am so excited to introduce you to my guest today, Michelle. Michelle, I am just going to open the floor up to you just so you can give a little brief introduction to our listeners about who you are and what you do.
Sure. So I am currently working as a coach and consultant for ambitious mums who are juggling all the things, work, business, kids, house, life, and just looking to be able to expand their inner capacity to juggle it all more effectively, more intentionally, and still be able to have that sense of impact with their genius zone or in their corporate career outside of motherhood, while also being present and connected at home. So that sense of sort of having it all, but we look at doing it in a way that feels manageable and really allows them to feel like they're connected to value systems inside and outside of motherhood.
Beautiful. I would love for you to share what your background is, what your personal story is of what led you to doing the work that you're doing today. How did you get here?
Yeah. So it is a bit of a long story and I'm going to condense it. And I think the most pivotal moment for me and the most important place to probably start with the story that has led me to where we are today is the moment that I thought I was going to become a mom and that identity was taken away from me. Unfortunately, I experienced a miscarriage early on in that pregnancy. And this was something I had just never expected. You hear about it, you sort of think, oh, that's not going to happen to me. And I went into our first ultrasound and was told there was no heartbeat. And it was the last thing I was expecting to hear. I was excited to hear the heartbeat. I had purchased a photo frame for my mum that recorded sound to record the heartbeat and put it in a photo frame. And so the complete opposite happened and just completely unexpected. And when I had wanted to be a mum so badly, that was all I was hoping for. It was a really interesting experience from an identity perspective because you're sort of given that identity to an extent, you're going to become a mom, and then all of a sudden the next day you're not. It's gone, and I hadn't really experienced anything like that with an identity loss. It could be similar to someone who's maybe like a pro athlete and has an injury and suddenly that identity's ripped away, or someone's building a corporate career and suddenly they get fired or made redundant. And it's that sense of who am I if I'm not this? And it was a really big turning point for me, a lot of soul searching and a lot of tears. And I did take a bit of a step back from my business because it didn't feel important. It sort of was this sense of losing myself a little bit and not sure where to go without, this identity that I thought I had. So that was really interesting. And then it sort of started this path of trying again to get pregnant again. And that actually started to take quite a long time, the second time around, whereas the first time had happened quickly. So it was this new experience again of having to wait and trust. And months would go by seeing negative pregnancy tests. And yeah, it was just this whole experience for me over 5 to 6 months of fully learning to trust myself, listen into my intuition more, work out who I was and what my identity was outside of these external things that we place on ourselves, and fully let go. Really, there was this huge surrendering that I had to have. And I had this moment on my lounge room floor that I can remember, and I was just crying my eyes out, just why isn't this happening? Like, it's all I want, please. And I just sort of in that moment let go. And I was just like, I can't control this. All I can do is show up for it. And the rest is up to the universe, really. And I just had this feeling of letting it go. And that was the month I got my positive pregnancy test with my first daughter. So it was a big lesson for me in like being able to let go and surrender. And often that's when those miracles can happen for you. And she's now nearly 4 years old, and I have a second daughter as well now who is 18 months old. So I have been deep in the motherhood juggle over the last 4 years. I've been at home with them and building businesses around them that allow me to be home and have that flexibility and not too much pressure around trying to do it all, but doing it in a way that feels good for me. And in doing that, I have also learned the skills to be able to make that sustainable, to have that sense of sustainable success without burning myself out and really needing to choose what goes on the to-do list, what goes into the mental load. And for me, a big part of that was actually letting go of a business that I had prior to the miscarriage that was extremely successful. My partner and I had built an e-commerce skincare brand into a global brand. I'm pretty sure we were in Canada. I'm over in Australia if you can't tell from my accent. But we were in like Target in America, all the like big skincare, big box stores, and really grew that into a movement. And that was really fun to do from literally an idea that I had in my bedroom one night at like 10 o'clock. And I said, let's try and like make these products and get it happening. And we did. But in doing that and having that experience, I had to let go of it when my first daughter came along because it just wasn't aligned to the kind of motherhood journey I wanted to have and like where I felt I was going. It was great to run a really successful seven-figure business, but for me, and people might have experienced this if you have had money before or a high-paying career where it's not actually about that. And if it doesn't feel aligned, there's no real point. Like the money doesn't matter. And I kind of got to that point where it I wasn't able to show up as the mum that I wanted to be. And we made the decision to move on from that business and start looking at what was next for us and the next sort of project. And for me, that kind of evolved into coaching and consulting because I had run a big business before. And so I was naturally able to coach people around the mindset and the juggle and the strategy of that. And then as motherhood evolved for me, that kind of came into the picture as well because I just saw how mums were struggling to juggle the pressure of being good at everything and holding everything down. And over time, it's just naturally evolved into me seeing a real need for mums to have that support and really be able to build their internal capacity, often in a system and a society that doesn't necessarily reward working mums. So that's sort of how I've got to where I am today. My background's in counseling, so I did a lot of that in my corporate career before stepping away for the business that I ran. So I've kind of taken everything that I've learned over the last 10 or so years, and it's kind of now bundled beautifully into what I'm doing in the coaching space. So very excited to have a conversation with you about all of that and dive into some of that a bit more. But that's, yeah, sort of how my journey has evolved.
It is the coolest thing. This is one of my favorite things about connecting with other women like this is seeing how all of those little pieces of the story, or even just like massive pivotal moments in the moment, were just entirely their own thing. Each one is just all consuming in the moment, and every single one of them is a huge piece to the puzzle of what fuses together all of your freaking magic now. And it's so incredible. It's so cool. What would you say are the main tools or modalities that supported you the most on your journey that have really become like the foundation or backbone of the work that you're doing with people now?
I think it's really interesting, especially when you come from counseling and like a more formal line of, this kind of work. It's really interesting to see what I've learned from that space and what has kind of evolved in actually helping me these days. Because I would say what I have found anyway, some of that traditional talk therapy, while I wholeheartedly believe in psychology and like that professional support and talking through things, I think a lot of the time that's not necessarily what mums who are in burnout or just struggling with a heavy mental load actually need. They kind of need more of that ability to act and to regulate in the moment and not necessarily just be talking about it on a couch for hours. I think for me, the biggest one has obviously been around nervous system regulation. But when I say that, it's going deeper than just the self care, like the surface level self care. And I talk a lot about this in my content where mums, I see it all the time in mums groups where mums will say, I'm so burnt out, I'm really struggling, give me all your tips, mamas. And it's a laundry list of deep breathing, go for a walk on the beach, have some me time without your kids, the whole bubble bath, meditation, and those are all fantastic tools and they can definitely help us to regulate and have some space. But what I've really found for myself is that the deeper regulating things for me are things like knowing my values and how I'm living in alignment with those. Because I know as soon as I'm not living in alignment with those big values, I'm dysregulated immediately. Like, I just feel like I'm not on my path. I feel like something, like, if I'm not being creative or if I'm not able to be feeling like I'm making an impact in the world, maybe it's a busy time with the kids and I'm in the house for 5 days straight with sick kids. I start to feel that become dysregulating for me because I know there's more within me that needs to be expressed. Boundaries is a huge one, especially for mums, being able to know what to say yes and say no to, because if you can't discern that for yourself, that's when you find yourself overpiling your to-do list, saying yes to everything, feeling guilty if you put some walls in place that actually protect your system and your regulation. And energy management has been huge as well. But I sort of look at this in a number of different ways. I look at it from a practical perspective of managing my schedule and my day in a way that works with my energy and almost fuels me rather than drains me. So I'm always thinking like, I have like high energy moments and low energy moments, which a lot of people might have throughout their day. Like maybe you're not really a morning person, maybe you're a night owl, maybe Fridays are just out of the picture for you to do anything like super heavy. You just want to like chill out on Fridays. So I sort of notice that in myself and I try to plan my schedules around how I'm feeling energetically. We can even link this in with our cycles as women. I know definitely there's phases in my cycle where things are harder in terms of showing up in my business, and I try to work with that to fuel myself rather than put pressure on myself to keep pushing and drain myself even further, because again, that's where we can get into survival mode and completely dysregulate ourselves. So I think the nervous system part is important, but I think it does go so much deeper than what a lot of the time we're told is nervous system regulation, and that's maybe a conversation we could dive deeper into because I know you do a lot of work around this as well from an energy perspective. But I think so many people are getting caught up in that fluffy self-care that doesn't actually change much once you get back home and all the chaos is still there or all the triggers are still there. So that would be the biggest one for me. And then I know you asked for two. I would say identity work is something that's been really important for me as well. And weaved into that is self-trust. I have had trouble trusting myself. There's often been a lot of self-doubt and anxiety around making the right decisions, not making mistakes, not messing things up. I'm a very high achieving, ambitious woman. And like with that comes this tendency to want to have everything figured out before I've ever even tried it. And I think this can be common as well, that perfectionism. And something that's helped me with this is just working on my identity and self trust. But the identity piece, it's being able to really shift into like that version of me who goes after the big things, who doesn't doubt herself, and like almost like an alter ego. And I actually have a name for her. I call her Raven. And I don't know where that came from. But I was like, that sounds like really strong and boss, and like she knows what she's doing. So, it's almost been this process of when I feel doubt, or maybe I'm going to go towards something in my business and I'm afraid it's going to fail or nobody's going to like it. I can kind of tap into that version and be like, what would she do? And, it's almost like that vision board version of myself. And the more that I can connect in with that, I've found the more I can go and make those moves that I probably wouldn't have. And that's then, helping me to shape this life that feels so aligned and joyful and regulated most of the time, as much as possible. So those would be like the two big pillar things for me.
Oh my God. Okay, first of all, giving your alter ego a freaking persona and a name is brilliant because in those moments, you can literally just ask, what would Raven do? What would she do today? How would she show up in this moment? And it really does like flip that switch in your brain instead of like, what would the higher version of me do? It really just like, it makes her an actual persona. I love that. I am definitely going to use this tool myself. I freaking love it.
It's actually something that I teach inside my group program because I think it is really important when you give it a name. It's almost like you can embody it rather than, I have had this sense of a higher self, but you kind of like, well, like, what is that tangibly? So at least I can imagine this as a version of myself. Like I can see what she would be wearing, how she would be acting, how she would be speaking. And the nerd that I am, even took it one step further and created a custom chat GPT version of her.
Oh,
So sometimes if I'm really struggling, I will let go and I'll be like, what do I need to do? Like, this is what I'm struggling with. Like, what would you do? And like, it almost like taps me into that version again. So if you're into your chat GPT, that might be something you could do as well.
I love it. I love this so much because I also, in what I teach, have my clients create a persona out of their bank account so that
I
when
love
they
that.
sit down, they can actually have like a date, like a money date with their bank account and speak to it as if it's a person to change that energetic interaction. So I love this so much. And I do want to go back to the self-care topic because I agree with you so much on this topic and that deep, real self-care is so much more impactful and so much more important. Like you said, like setting those like the actual foundational self-care, right? What am I putting into my body? What am I fueling my energy with? What am I pouring my energy into? What am I tolerating? Which, like you said, are all of those same things, like actual self-care, nervous system regulation, setting the freaking healthy boundaries. And I am super nerdy about cycle energetics. So when you brought that up, I was like, speaking to my soul, because I am the girl who books my entire calendar essentially around my cycle, whether it's calls like this, like I'm in ovulation right now. So I'm like, we're doing podcast interviews. I'm
Yeah.
launching in this energy. I will pull up my schedule and be like, I can't get together with that person. I'm too close to my period. It's just a hard no. And like I have the firmest boundaries around my cycle to the point that my husband's like you still have to like human. And I'm like, not that week, I don't.
That's so good. That's awesome.
I really love that you mentioned that. And I know that with motherhood, that's sometimes like a trickier thing to work around, especially depending on like whether or not your cycle has even come back. right? Like it's a whole other ball game, and like I don't have kids, so like that's not an area of expertise for me. But I also like to talk to like if you don't have a cycle that you can plan around the lunar cycle. But yeah.
Yeah, it's been funny with motherhood and postpartum, especially this time around with my second. I'm still breastfeeding 18 months later, but I did get my cycle back quite early. But just the hormone, like juggling act when you are trying to wean a baby. And I've noticed like my cycle a lot more and the changes that happen throughout it, which never used to be a problem for me. Like earlier on in my life, I never was someone that I probably wouldn't even notice where I was in my cycle, to be honest. But it's definitely something I've become a lot more aware of and notice the changes in mood and things. And there are times where I do have to be super conscious of like keeping myself in that tolerance zone and regulated. And it's almost a little bit harder than it would be at other times. But that's when your tools become so much more important. And, even just like motherhood and life, there's always going to be unexpected things and challenges. And with kids, there's chaos and sick days and mess. And when we can start to really regulate ourselves through those ups and downs, that's when you really start to like become unstoppable with all that you're doing.
Absolutely. And it's a really beautiful idea to aim to build a life where you don't need to lean on those tools. But realistically, as human beings, there's always going to be shit that happens where we need tools to lean on. And I think it is so helpful to have a support system and to have like a toolkit that you can lean on, whether it's for nervous system regulation or energetics, or even just ways to deal with things specifically when like your kids are sick, or just to have that toolkit that you can pull from to help get yourself through that down period, knowing that everything is a cycle, everything passes, and you are going to come out of it on the other side. But having those tools, I agree with you, is the most important thing that we can do for ourselves.
Absolutely.
So I would love if you have time, share with the listeners what you have going on right now and how they could get into your world if they're listening and they're like, this girl, I need inside her containers.
Yeah, absolutely. Thank you. So the best place to find me would be on Instagram. That's probably the most easy option for everybody. And that's at michelle.kerr, Kerr, and I'll give you all the info. And at the moment, I have a free Telegram community. That would also be a great place to start without, needing to pay anything. It's a community that I'm building called More Than Mama, and it's really for ambitious mums that are building impact around motherhood. And we just talk about all that sort of stuff. I drop in with audios and tips and activations, and we also run some mini programs in there. So there's a few little bits and pieces that are already in there that you can dig your teeth into and get started with. And then my main program is a group program and container where I house my framework, my capacity expansion framework. And this is the 4 pillars that I have found in my journey have been the most impactful to expanding my own capacity and my self-leadership and my self-trust to be able to go after the big goals and the big dreams while also being a present mom and not feeling like you're completely fried and operating from survival mode, or feeling like you're in these stop start cycles, or it's just not your time yet. We really try to make it all work together in a sustainable and manageable way, and you get coaching and community support as you start to integrate that, and we dive into these topics in a lot more depth. And I really support you to be able to start making those small shifts to the external things like your scheduling, your to-do list, but also a lot of the inner work around, what we've talked about today, the nervous system regulation, the identity, the self-trust, because it all works together in a beautiful way to really be able to help you make that expansion for yourself. So that would be my biggest recommendation in terms of working together. It's a great place to start just to get all the tools and all of that support. It's something that's open all the time, so you can join whenever you want. You can just get in touch with me on Instagram, or you'll find the information in my links on my Instagram as well if you want to have a bit of a look at that. But any questions, you can just send me a DM message and we can chat through any questions, any queries that you have. But yeah, that's sort of me in a nutshell, and the best place to start. So I would love if you've resonated with this, if you're a mum building something, it doesn't have to be a business, it can be a corporate career around little kids, and looking to really be able to have that sense of the leadership edge and an expanded inner capacity to really take things to the next level and build that impactful, intentional life that you know you're meant for. I would love to connect with you.
Thank you. Thank you so much, Michelle, for taking this time to be here with us today. And I'm also going to put all of your contact details and links in the show notes so that people can just connect with you directly from this episode if they resonate with all of your beautiful offers, and also so that they can get their butts into your free Telegram, because why would they pass that up? So thank you so much for being here. Thank you for sharing your magic and just a little bit of your story with our listeners. I'm sure that everyone listening took at least one juicy nugget out of what you had to say today. So thank you so much for being here.
Thanks, Becky. It's been awesome. Thank you so much for having me.
You're so welcome. And thank you all so much for listening, and we will see you on the next episode.